I want to talk to you a bit about the concept of worry and fear, because these two emotions, they're like handcuffs, chaining you to your grief and preventing you from moving on. And worry and fear are also obviously not specific to grief in that you'll encounter these feelings throughout life, so it's important you become familiar with how to handle worry and fear when they become overwhelming. Now, if you ask most people why they have not reached a level of acceptance in their state of grief, they'll usually respond with some built-in excuse or negative belief that's holding them back. Underlying this excuse or negative belief is usually a fear or worry. How many times have you attempted something new only to stop before you ever got started because you're afraid of what others may think? Or you don't think you have the time or energy, or both? Or because you believe that you're inexperienced or lack the knowledge to find success in whatever it is you're pursuing. One of my favorite definitions of fear breaks down the word into an easy to remember acronym, and in it, fear is defined as false evidence appearing real, which means we have chosen to believe in something that's not really true, but because it's our belief, it's our reality. And worry is nothing more than a sustained fear caused by indecision. Sometimes we need to ask some tough questions to determine the cause of these worries or fears. Once the fear is identified, a simple formula can be used to overcome that fear. And the first step is to clearly define what you're afraid of or worried about. Write it down, put it on paper. Half of your worries and fears will be solved the instant you can define them clearly by putting them on paper. And what once seemed big in your mind, it will look smaller and less significant on paper. And for the other half, the more challenging worries, you need to move on to step 2. You need to ask yourself, what's the worst possible thing that can happen if this fear or worry becomes true? So I really want you to make a list and write it down on paper, underneath your clearly defined worry. Keep writing down everything that comes to mind until you've identified the worst possible outcome. And I want you to notice something as you carry on this exercise. I want you to realize that 90% of what we worry about never happens. So I want you to think about how much time you spend on worrying about stuff that will never actually happen. And this list will help you see that. And once you've completed your list, resolve in your mind that you'll accept the worst possible thing that can happen. And I know that's hard to do, but since 90% of those things will never occur, and generally the other 10% will not kill you, realize that you will survive almost all of this worry that you've listed. You need to accept the worst possible thing by telling yourself, I can handle it. And I know that sounds oversimplified, but really telling yourself that over and over again, it will start to turn things around and it will start to calm your mind. Finally, I want you to make sure that the worst never happens. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but I want you to put together an action plan of exactly what you need to do to either turn things around or move things in the opposite direction of that worry. By focusing on positive changes and implementing your action plan, your focus will shift to the positive outcomes and away from your fears or the negative consequences. You'll begin to feel better because you can now do something. And positive action is the only cure for fear and worry. So I want you to try this formula today and see if it will work for you. It's worked for me and many others, so you'll definitely be in good company. And if you're going through, grief or despair right now, and your worry really just seems, impossible to overcome, you should take this learning a step further and check out transformgrief.com right now, where I have a series of videos that will really help turn your grief around and put your mind into a positive place. And I know what it feels like to be in deep grief. It feels like you'll never smile again, but it really is possible. You will smile again, you will laugh again, and you will feel good again. So visit transformgrief.com right now, let the healing begin, and start feeling better in minutes.